If you understand this, the rest is simple. Wealth is not a matter of luck, nor is it a mysterious gift bestowed by the gods upon a chosen few, but rather a result of a specific, repeatable psychological and mathematical alignment with the laws of the universe. Within the sun-drenched, dust-choked streets of ancient Babylon, the wealthiest city the world has ever known, a profound drama of human ambition and financial liberation unfolded, offering a blueprint for the modern soul lost in the labyrinth of debt and scarcity. The narrative begins not with a king or a conqueror, but with Bansa, the chariot builder, and Kobi, the musician, two men who had labored under the blistering Mesopotamian sun for decades, only to find their purses as empty as the desert wind. They represent the archetype of the stagnant worker, the individual who equates effort with reward, yet fails to realize that without a shift in consciousness, hard work is merely a treadmill leading to an inevitable grave of poverty. Their realization, the sudden, jarring awareness that they have spent their lives building the dreams of others while their own withered, serves as the catalyst for the entire journey. They turn to Arkad, a man who began as a humble scribe Chepthu but rose to become the richest man in Babylon. Arkad is the archetype of the integrated master, the one who has reconciled the desire for material abundance with the discipline of the spirit. When they approach him, they do not ask for gold, they ask for the wisdom to attract it. Arkad's response is a masterpiece of psychological deconstruction. He reveals that the secret to his fortune was not a secret at all, but a fundamental shift in how he viewed his relationship with the fruits of his labor. He recalls his encounter with Algamish, the grizzled moneylender, who gave him the first and the most vital seed of prosperity. I found the road to wealth when I decided that a part of all I earned was mine to keep. This simple statement carries a density that most fail to grasp. To the average person, the money they earn belongs to the landlord, the grocer, and the taxman. Arkad challenges this victimhood, demanding that the individual pay themselves first. This is the first cure for a lean purse, the 10% rule. It is a ritual of self-respect, a declaration to the universe that you are a priority in your own life. Analyzing this through a psychological lens, we see that the 10% is not just capital, it is the prima materia of your future freedom. By retaining a tenth of your income, you are breaking the cycle of consumerist slavery and beginning the process of building a financial shadow that works in your favor. Arkad's story continues through his trials, the moments where he failed, such as giving his savings to a brickmaker to buy jewels, only to be swindled. This represents the archetypal trial of discernment. It teaches that wealth requires not just the accumulation of resources, but the cultivation of wisdom. You do not ask a baker for advice on the stars, nor do you entrust your future to the incompetent. The lesson here is profound. Your money is a living entity, a servant that can be easily slain by the sword of your own ignorance. To grow a fortune, one must seek counsel only from those whose own success proves their competence. As Arkad's influence spreads, the king of Babylon, recognizing the systemic poverty of his subjects, enlists him to teach the masses. This leads to the 7 cures for a lean purse, a series of psychological and practical mandates that transform the city's collective consciousness. The narrative shifts to the Great Hall of the Temple of Learning, where 100 men sit in hushed anticipation. Arkad begins to dismantle their excuses. He speaks of control thy expenditures. The second cure, which is perhaps the most difficult for the human ego to accept. It is the art of distinguishing between necessary expenses and desires. The ego is a bottomless pit of wants, constantly seeking external validation through the acquisition of things. Arkad argues that unless we discipline our appetites, our expenses will always rise to meet our income, leaving us in a state of perpetual anxiety. Psychologically, this is about the mastery of the self. It is about realizing that true wealth is not the ability to buy anything, but the power to need nothing. The third cure, make thy gold multiply, transitions from preservation to expansion. Arkad describes gold as a workforce, each coin a slave working for you. This is the birth of passive income, the moment when the individual ceases to be the sole engine of their prosperity and begins to leverage the power of compounding. This represents the archetype of the sower, the one who understands that a single seed, if nurtured, can eventually provide shade for an entire generation. However, the path is fraught with shadows. The fourth cure, guard thy treasures from loss, warns against the siren song of get-rich-quick schemes. It is the psychological defense against greed, the shadow side of the desire for wealth. Many lose their fortunes because they lack the patience to let the alchemical process take its course, seeking instead to bypass the struggle through risky gambles. Arkad's wisdom suggests that the first priority of investment is the safety of the principal. As the narrative deepens, we encounter the fifth cure, make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. This is a call for stability and the psychological peace that comes with owning the ground beneath one's feet. It reduces the cost of living and instills a sense of pride and permanence. Following this is the sixth cure, ensure a future income, which is the archetype of the visionary. It demands that we look beyond the vigor of youth and prepare for the winter of old age and the protection of our families after we are gone. This is the ultimate act of responsibility, a bridging of the gap between the present self and the future self. Finally, the seventh cure, increase thy ability to earn, brings the focus back to the individual's inner value. Arkad insists that the more wisdom we know, the more we may earn. This is the investment in the human capital, the realization that you are the ultimate asset. A man who seeks to learn more of his craft will be richly rewarded. This is the move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. He who remains stagnant in his skills will inevitably find his income stagnant as well. Through these 7 cures, Arkad does not just provide a financial manual, he provides a psychological architecture for a life of dignity. The lesson is clear, wealth is the external reflection of internal order. If your mind is a chaotic mess of impulsive desires and short-term thinking, your purse will reflect that chaos. But if you cultivate the discipline to pay yourself, the wisdom to seek counsel, and the patience to let your slaves of gold multiply, the universe has no choice but to reflect that order back to you. The story then introduces us to the goddess of good luck. In a world where most attribute success to chance, the Babylonians understood a deeper truth. At the Temple of Learning, men debate whether luck is a random lightning strike or something that can be courted. Through the stories told in the temple, it is revealed that good luck is actually the archetype of opportunity meeting preparation. Luck is not a fickle goddess who favors the idle, she is attracted to those who take action. The tragedy of the procrastinator is highlighted, the man who sees a great opportunity but hesitates until it vanishes. This is a profound psychological insight into the fear of success. Many people subconsciously sabotage their own luck because they are afraid of the responsibility that comes with it. They wait for a perfect moment that never arrives, failing to realize that the moment of action is the only moment that exists. The lesson here is that good luck follows action. It is the reward for the man who moves when the omens are right, who doesn't allow the paralysis of analysis to keep him on the sidelines. The Babylonians believed that to court luck, one must be a man of his word, especially to himself. When you commit to a plan of savings or investment, any deviation is a signal to the universe that you are not ready for the abundance you claim to seek. This section of the narrative serves to empower the listener, shifting the locus of control from the external world of fate to the internal world of will. It asserts that you are not a victim of circumstance, but a creator of opportunity. The narratives of Babylon are not just about coins, they are about the reclamation of human agency in a world that often feels indifferent to our survival. Each story is a layer of psychological armor, preparing the seeker to face the desert of life with a clear eye and a steady hand. The narrative shifts from the theoretical halls of the temple to the visceral, bone-deep struggle of the debtor's shadow, embodied in the harrowing journey of Dabasir, the camel trader. This is not a story of a man who found wealth easily, but of a man who had to claw his way out of the abyss of his own making. Dabasir represents the archetype of the prodigal son, a man who possessed the freedom of Babylon but squandered it through the pursuit of false status and the intoxication of credit. Imagine the psychological weight of a man who once walked the streets with his head high, only to find himself a slave in a distant land, tending to the camels of a harsh master. This is the ultimate Negredo stage, the blackening of the soul where pride is incinerated, and all that remains is the raw reality of one's choices. In the silence of the desert, Dabasir realizes that his debts are not just financial obligations, they are chains on his spirit. He understands that a man who carries unpaid debts is a man with the soul of a slave. Regardless of his physical status, the turning point occurs when he encounters Sira, his master's wife, who challenges him to prove whether he has the soul of a free man or the soul of a slave. This question is the piercing spear that awakens his latent will. To have the soul of a free man is to take absolute responsibility for one's failures and to forge a path toward restitution. No matter how arduous, Dabasir's escape across the unforgiving wasteland is a metaphor for the agonizing process of financial recovery. He is starving, dehydrated, and alone, yet he is driven by a singular, burning vision, to return to Babylon and repay every copper he owes. This is the archetype of the Redeemer. Upon his return, he does not hide in the shadows of his shame. Instead, he creates a plan, the famous 70/20/10 ratio. He dedicates 70% of his income to the humble support of his life, 20% to the systematic repayment of his creditors, and 10% to his own savings. This plan is his golden tablet, a psychological contract that restores his dignity. Through the story of Dabasir, the book teaches that the first step toward wealth is the reclamation of one's honor. You cannot build a castle on a foundation of broken promises. The analysis of this segment reveals that debt is a psychic leak, a constant drain on the creative energy of the individual. By facing his creditors and honoring his word, Dabasir seals that leak, allowing his financial self to finally retain the energy required for growth. As the tapestry of Babylon continues to unfold, we encounter Rodan, the spearmaker, who finds himself at a crossroads after receiving a windfall of 50 gold pieces. This is the trial of the heart. Rodan is the archetype of the giver, a man whose kindness threatens to become his undoing. His sister desires the gold to start her husband in a business he does not understand, creating a conflict between Rodan's love and his wisdom. He seeks the counsel of Mathan, the gold lender, whose shop is a museum of human folly and triumph. Mathan's wisdom is cold, sharp, and necessary. He uses the parable of the farmer who understood the language of his animals. When the ox complained of his labor, the donkey advised him to feign illness. As a result, the farmer made the donkey do the ox's work. Mathan warns, if you desire to help thy friend, do so in a way that will not bring thy friend's burdens upon thyself. This is a crucial lesson in boundaries. It teaches that true charity is not the enabling of incompetence, but the strategic support of those who have already proven their merit. Mathan explains the various types of borrowers who come to his door. There are those who borrow with the soul of a lion, providing collateral and a clear path to repayment. These are the builders of the world. Then there are those who borrow with the soul of a lamb, driven by desperation or vanity, whose promises are as thin as the morning mist. To lend to a lamb is to lose both the gold and the friend. This segment emphasizes the protective wall of wealth. It is not enough to earn and save, one must develop the psychological fortitude to say no to the emotional blackmail of those who have not mastered themselves. The analysis here is clear: wealth is a tool for empowerment, not a ransom for the guilt of others. By learning the laws of the loan, Rodan learns that his gold is a responsibility. He chooses to lend only where the seed will grow, rather than where it will be consumed. This is the movement from emotional reactivity to strategic rationality. The narrative then plunges into the dark heart of the city's history with the walls of Babylon, a story of collective defense. As the fierce Elamites lay siege to the city, the citizens are gripped by terror. They look to the old guard atop the walls, asking, "Are we safe?" The answer is always the same: the walls of Babylon will protect you. This story serves as a profound metaphor for the inner fortress of financial security. Just as the city relied on its physical walls to withstand the onslaught of the enemy, the individual must rely on their financial walls, insurance, savings, and diverse investments, to withstand the unpredictable sieges of life, such as sickness, loss of work, or economic collapse. The walls represent the archetype of the protector. Without them, even the most prosperous man is a victim in waiting. This lesson reinforces the idea that the pursuit of wealth is not merely about greed. but about the creation of a sanctuary for the soul and for those we love. It is the realization that peace of mind is a product of preparation. Finally, the book brings us to the story of Shahunada, the merchant prince, who travels with a young, spoiled man named Hoddan Gula. Hoddan is the grandson of Shahu's former partner, but he is a man of thin blood, believing that work is beneath him and that wealth is his birthright. To cure him of his arrogance, Shahunada recounts his own origins as a slave. He describes the slave market of Babylon, where men were sold like cattle based on their strength and their will. Shahunada reveals that it was his love of work that saved him. Even as a slave, he sought to be the best baker, the most diligent servant, the most useful man. He understood that work is the best friend a man ever had. While other slaves complained and plotted, Shahunada focused on his craft, attracting the attention of masters who valued his competence. This is the archetype of the master craftsman. He explains that work is the bridge between the world of dreams and the world of reality. It is the alchemical fire that transforms a man's character. When Shahunada eventually earned his freedom, it was not because of luck, but because he had made himself so valuable that he could no longer be contained by the chains of slavery. The analysis of this final story is a direct assault on the modern entitlement complex. It asserts that the desire to get something for nothing is the hallmark of a slave's mindset. The free man understands that value must be exchanged for value. Hard work is not a curse to be avoided, it is the very mechanism of self-creation. By the end of the journey, Hoddan Gula is transformed. He realizes that his grandfather's wealth was not a pile of gold to be spent, but a legacy of labor to be honored. He picks up the staff and decides to walk the path of the worker, finally understanding that his grandfather was not just a rich man, but a man who found joy in the struggle of creation. The overarching theme of these stories is the integration of the shadow. Every character, from the debtor Dabasir to the slave Shahunada, must confront the darkest aspects of their reality, their poverty, their shame, their laziness, and their fear. Only by looking directly at the empty purse and the slave chain can they find the resolve to transform them. The book suggests that the secret of Babylon is not found in a magical formula, but in the relentless application of simple laws. It is a philosophy of radical self-reliance wrapped in the cloak of ancient myth. It demands that you stop looking to the gods or the government for your salvation and start looking to the 10% in your hand. It is a call to awaken from the dream of the lotus eater and enter the reality of the builder. The legacy of Babylon culminates in the realization that the laws of gold are, in truth, the laws of the human psyche. The final movement of this narrative tapestry pulls the listener away from the dusty markets and into the profound silence of the inner treasury. Most fail not because of a lack of effort, but because they lack the spiritual stamina to remain consistent when the initial excitement of a new journey fades. The stories of Arkad, Dabasir, and Shahunada are not merely historical echoes, they are mirrors reflecting the universal struggle between the higher self which seeks expansion, discipline, and legacy, and the lower ego which seeks immediate gratification, comfort, and the avoidance of pain. The core message of this ancient wisdom is that wealth is the natural byproduct of a soul that has achieved order. It is the external proof that a man has conquered his own impulses and aligned his will with the constructive forces of the universe. As we look upon the final artifacts of this Babylonian wisdom, the 5 laws of gold emerge as a definitive psychological code. The first 3 laws focus on the attraction and retention of wealth, saving the 10th, investing wisely, and seeking the counsel of masters. But the final 2 laws delve into the shadow, warning that gold slips away from the person who invests in businesses they do not know, or who follows the siren song of tricksters and romantic, unrealistic dreams of wealth. This is the archetype of the fool, the one who believes they can cheat the natural law of cause and effect. The book insists that there is no magic stone that turns lead into gold without the intermediate step of human labor and time. The alchemical gold of Babylon is grown, not found. It is a slow, rhythmic process of accumulation that mirrors the growth of a mighty cedar tree. The psychological analysis of the final chapter reveals that the richest man in Babylon is not the one with the most gold, but the one with the most freedom. Freedom from the paralyzing fear of poverty. freedom from the soul-crushing weight of debt, and freedom from the need to beg for a place in the world. When you master your purse, you master your destiny. You move from being a pawn on the chessboard of the elites to being a player who can influence the lives of others for the better. The story of Shah Nader and the grandson of his friend serves as the ultimate closure, proving that wealth is a transgenerational spirit. It can be inherited as a physical substance, but if the wisdom is not inherited along with it, the gold will vanish like mist in the morning sun. The real inheritance is the mindset of the builder. The core message that George S. Clason intends to convey is that financial independence is a fundamental human duty. It is the act of taking your life out of the hands of fate and placing it into the hands of will. To be poor in a world of abundance is to live in a state of psychological fragmentation. To be wealthy is to achieve a state of holistic integration. The book challenges you to stop viewing money as an evil or a mystery and to start viewing it as a tool for the expression of your character. It demands a radical shift from a consumer consciousness to a producer consciousness. It asks you to look at every coin not as something to be spent, but as a seed to be planted. In the final analysis, the city of Babylon itself is the ultimate archetype. It was a city built in an arid valley without timber or stone. Yet it became the wealthiest place on earth because its people harnessed the only resource that is truly infinite, human ingenuity. They took the waters of the Euphrates and diverted them to turn the desert into a garden. They took the base clay of the earth and turned it into magnificent walls and temples. They proved that the environment is not a destiny, but a canvas. Your current financial state, no matter how bleak, is merely the base clay. By applying the 7 cures and the 5 laws, you are performing the great work of self-transmutation. You are building your own Babylon within the borders of your own life. The journey ends where it began, with the individual standing before the mirror of their own potential. The gold of Babylon still flows through the world today, but it only flows toward those who have the vessel to hold it. That vessel is a disciplined mind, a courageous heart, and a hand that is not afraid of the honest labor of creation. The richest man in Babylon is not a person who lived thousands of years ago. He is a psychological state that exists within you, waiting to be awakened by the first 10% you choose to keep. True wealth is the fortress of the mind, built stone by stone through the discipline of the hand and the vision of the soul.